Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zero F's Era. We're so happy to have you here. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, which is dedicated to raising awareness and reducing the stigma around mental and behavioral health. It's something that affects millions of people, including some who are personally close to me. And as many experts have noted, it was significantly exacerbated during the pandemic. But what's talked about far less is the toll that it takes on the people who love, support, and care for those who struggle. Today, I'm joined by Marika Cain, my good personal friend and longtime colleague, who knows that experience firsthand. She's here for an honest and deeply personal conversation about mental health, loving someone who is struggling, and what it means to support someone through their darkest moments. We'll talk about caregiving, emotional exhaustion, resilience, and the complicated reality of trying to help someone you love while still surviving yourself. Welcome, Marika.
Thank you so much for having me, Misty. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. Well, very happy to have you here. And as you may know, we start every Zero F's era conversation with the truth that we don't say out loud. So I'll ask you, what is your truth?
My truth is that I am happier now than I was before my husband died. And I think there's a lot of unpacking to do there, but that's it.
Well, yes, I would agree with that. And I think it may be hard for some to hear that or understand that. So, can you give us a clearer picture of what that means, your history and your experience in caring for your late husband, Ben?
Ben Kane, my wonderful husband, and I met in 2006, and we're married for 14 years. And about 9 years into it, he sort of out of the blue developed some serious anxiety and depression. He'd never been a person who struggled with mental health in his life. It really sort of blindsided both of us. And he struggled mightily for 4.5 years. He tried everything he could to get well. He tried therapies of various types, meditation, medications. And in the end, he wound up killing himself, which is the central tragedy of my life. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I would give anything to have him back. There's a lot of blanks to fill in those years, and that's what I'm here to do.
I know the tragedy that you've been through, but I really want to talk about the person. Can you tell me more about Ben and your relationship?
Ben Kane was the best person I ever met. He was funny, smart, stylish, kind, a great gift giver. We know that's important in a husband. He was a person that a lot of people in his life looked to for guidance and where to go next. His family, his friends, he had the best advice, and he had great taste in music and movies, and he was a lot of fun. He was the fun guy in our family. He was the one with the ideas for crazy things to do on the weekend and projects that we could do with Ollie, and he was a treasure. My family loved him. His family loved him. He was a special guy. So when I lost him, I lost my sounding board. I lost my co-parent. I lost half of our family's income and my favorite person. It was hard for me to imagine how I was going to continue on alone. I remember so vividly trying to find something to wear to the memorial, and he had always been my go-to fashion person. And I thought, oh my God, this is just the tip of the iceberg of the things that I'm going to have to navigate on my own now.
I can't imagine that. Thank you for sharing more about who he was as a person. I never actually got the chance to meet him. I wish I had.
You would have loved him.
I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. You shared about Ben and what an incredible person he was. Do you like he was your best friend? Do you still kind of have conversations with him in your mind, or like that memory of him stays with you, of course. So
Yeah, I think it manifests in the way that I behave in the world. There is a little Ben Kane on my shoulder at all times. You know, helping to guide me through tough situations, through funny situations. He was an extremely funny person, maybe one of the funniest people I've ever known. And when I have a tough situation, if it comes to me, I will try to inject some humor in it, because that was a little bit his way through hard times, and it served him well, and it continues to serve me well. It serves our child well. And some of the best conversations that Ollie and I have about Ben are around things that he would think are funny. He taught me a lot about having a sense of humor.
We've worked together for more than 20 years, but we only really got to know each other on a more personal level in the past few years. And we were together one night in a Paris cafe. A little later in the evening, after some wine, we were traveling together for work. And he started to open up about what had happened. And it really resonated with me. And I think it will with many, because I also have someone in my life who has struggled with depression. You kind of live in constant concern for them, to the point where it kind of can make your own life hard to live. And I want to be super clear on this. This is a reality, not an accusation. But tell me, was that the case for you? Is that some of the blanks to fill in?
It was. And part of the reason that I say I'm a happier person now than before Ben died has nothing to do with the toll that caring for him and carrying our family during that time took on me. It has much more to do with realizing how much I appreciate what is good in my life and all of the support and care that came along with his death, and the sort of surprising good developments that happened to me in the time when he was really not well. It was a central focus of my life. It was, is he going to be okay? There's layers. There's the concern for him and his health, having to balance my full-time job and parenting our child with looking out for him, going to appointments with him, and just, watching someone that you love the most in the world suffer up close is really painful. He had good days and good weeks, and he had harder times, but he could never really get back to the person he was before. It was a very stressful time. I feel fortunate to have had a pretty understanding work situation and a really fantastic family. But when it really came down to it, it was me, the closest person to him, that really saw it all in full color up close every day.
Must have been so hard. I know you say it kind of came up out of the blue. Was there anything that kind of triggered it, or anything that you saw happen that kind of led to this? Or did it really just sort of start to manifest itself?
It was so sudden. I'll never forget. It was March 2016, coming home from work one evening and standing in the kitchen with him. And he said to me, "I have to talk to you. Something is really wrong. I feel like a car whose engine is revving too fast. I don't know what's going on. It's really scary." It had started probably a month earlier, but he had been trying to figure it out on his own. I had no idea. In that moment, I just knew something big had changed in our life. I knew it in my bones. And sure enough, it was the turning point. He didn't know what it was at first. He had a panic attack one day at work, and not realizing what it was, wound up in the ER with all of these heart tests. So it just really took a long time to kind of figure out what was going on. The doctors didn't know, I think partly because he hadn't really had a history of anything. And then what we also discovered is once he did have something of a diagnosis, there's not a straightforward way to treat. So you kind of just try everything. And for him, medications didn't seem to be super effective. He found a, a lot of relief through things like meditation and exposure therapy, but it was never enough to help him feel like he had before the onset. And as it progressed, the anxiety sort of became a depression, I think, because he just couldn't really live his life normally. And I will say that during that time, he continued to be just a stellar husband and father to our child, who was just 9 or 10 at the time. But it really limited us in our range. I'm a travel magazine editor, and I really couldn't travel. I couldn't leave home because I didn't know how things were going to be going here. I had to take on a lot of our day-to-day running the house, pretty much logistics across the board, and it was a lot.
I would think so. You're dealing with this, and you mentioned you're also a mom. How did you balance that before, and then certainly how did you help your child through this tragedy as well?
We were pretty upfront with Ollie before Ben died about what was going on in a way that was appropriate for an elementary schooler. Dad is having anxiety, and we both felt like this was going to pass in the beginning anyway. And so Ollie would ask us, is he going to get better? When is he going to be well again? And we couldn't say. And part of what I carried forward from that time is just being able to live with the uncertainty that is around us every day, whether it's a situation like mine that's a little bit more dire, or some work situation, or even a social situation. Just learning that it's a little bit of an illusion that we are in control. When you can let go of that and just appreciate being in the moment when the moment is good, and when the moment is hard, understanding that that's where you are and it may or may not change. It is something that I still grapple with deeply, but it has really given me a lot of foundational strength, I think, for what came next. And then as far as after Ben's death, the thing that I learned there is that there is no roadmap for helping your child grieve. I have a kid who's wonderful and happy, but not really one to talk about emotions. And so I think the first thing everyone says when something like that happens is, oh my gosh, you have to find a good therapist, which I tried. It turns out you cannot give therapy to someone who doesn't want therapy. And so I feel like Ollie and I have worked through it in our own ways. I've let Ollie know that the door is always open. If you want therapy at any point in your life, I'm here. I'm going to help you make it happen. I think that therapy for my kid at that time was the friendships in their life and the family support that really surrounded us afterward.
Let's talk a little bit more about that because you do say, you realized sort of the blessing in disguise as you had all of the support around you. One of the things I've always struggled with, and I talked to you about this too, like I felt so bad. One, I didn't know you've been going through this. And two, after it happened, I didn't know how to be there for you. And I think a lot of people kind of struggle with that. So how did your support system sort of rally around you?
Yeah, I mean, once again, I think there's not one right answer. What everyone needs is so different depending on who they are. Right in the immediate aftermath, I was so overwhelmed that I didn't really want anyone's support in that way. People wanted to come and be with me, and it felt too raw, and I just needed to be alone. There was a small group of very close people, my sisters, my parents, Ben's parents, who I'm super close to, and his sister, and a couple of my very best friends. I think I realized that our world had become so small when Ben was unwell. We just weren't really able to commit to a lot of social obligations. I had to stick closer to home. And the delight in discovering that there were so many people around us ready to do whatever I needed to support me during that time was wonderful. And so what I always tell people is, if you don't know what to do or say, that's okay. Just say something small. You can say, I'm thinking of you. I'm so sorry. I think it is popular now to tell people, don't ask a grieving person like, hey, if there's anything you need, just let me know. But I don't mind that. I would say that any small outreach was appreciated and not forgotten. The notes that I got meant so much to me. We had a really beautiful memorial where I spoke and a few friends and family spoke, and that was really a healing space for me, and I think for Ollie too. The happiness that came afterward, I think in part was realizing that I had this solid community foundation. I worked for an incredible company that lifted me up during that time. Everyone from my immediate close team members to the larger organization, people at school that I didn't really even know reached out. Even people who'd had the same experience as me. I'll never forget calling to say that Ollie was coming back to school. And the woman who worked at the front desk in the office said, I just have to tell you, I had this same experience. And if you ever want to get together and have tea, it helped me feel so much less alone. And she did come over and we had tea and we had this really nice, supportive interaction. And then The other thing that was my salvation during that time was a support group I found. So, shout out to the Healing Center in Seattle. They do grief support groups of all stripes, but there is one for survivors of suicide. It was sort of late pandemic at the time. And so it was a Zoom session. And I'll never forget showing up for the first one and seeing these people who had all experienced the same kind of traumatic loss on this call, kind of laughing and joking with each other. And just that little peek into what my future could maybe feel like was so hopeful for me. Yeah.
Just knowing there was laughter again awaiting you.
Yeah.
At what point do you kind of allow yourself to start to heal in that way and to start to feel happiness again?
I think whenever it presents itself, you grab onto it. I had a close friend come stay with me. Ben died in October of 2021. And so it was sliding into the holiday season. She came in early December, maybe late November, and we put up a Christmas tree, and Ollie and Karina and I decorated together. And it was the first time since his death that I really laughed and really felt that true feeling of lightness. I just leaned into those little moments whenever they presented themselves, and continued to do that, and still try to today.
Did you have time to grieve yourself when you had, a child to worry about? You were worried about Ollie as well.
Yeah, I spent plenty of time crying in front of my kid. um, yeah, I grief is not a straight line process at all. I think anyone who's lost someone close to them understands that it ebbs and flows. I did a lot of crying in the car. I still do. I don't know what it is about the car, but it's like a safe little bubble where the
Yeah, it's
tears
your own
just
little
sometimes
chamber there.
come. Yeah, and it will still, to this day, pop up at inopportune times, and I've just made my peace with it. It comes when it comes, and I write it out, and I know that this will not last. Much like the happy feelings that I feel, the grief too will subside. It's never gonna go away. I feel like it's something that is now just a part of who I am.
It's kind of become the fabric of who you are.
Yeah. I think I'm a richer person for it. I'm maybe more empathetic person, and really in tune with reaching for the good things in my life.
You've come through something that's just unimaginable loss, this great tragedy of your life. But I also know you to be this really lovely, joyful person. I'm so fortunate. I just got to spend a week with you in Seoul, and we had the best time together. As you say, grief isn't linear, and it doesn't have a timetable. Are you optimistic? And, are you looking at dating again? Does that even come up for you?
Definitely. So early on, after Ben died, I was out on a walk with a friend, and sort of out of the blue, she said to me, You know, I think that love could come for you at any time, and you should be open to it whenever that might happen. There's no such thing as the right time. And at the time, I thought she was crazy because we were literally 3 or 4 weeks out. And that was the last thing on my mind.
Just
I
trying to
was
get,
just
yeah, yeah.
surviving. But something must have stuck with me. I think she planted a seed, and just 8 months actually after Ben died, I was definitely not looking to date. Someone from my past popped back up. And at first I thought, like, this is crazy. I can't do this. He had invited me to LA for a weekend. And then when I thought about how it made me feel to have that potential fun experience, I wanted to grab onto it. I wanted a chance to feel truly happy like I hadn't in a long time. And so I went, and it was magic. It was wonderful. We had a great time, and what I thought was just going to be a fun weekend actually turned into a 3-year relationship that was really special and healing, and it ran its course. We're not together anymore, but showed me that it was possible to feel truly happy again in a way that I hadn't felt, not only since Ben's death, but in the years before when I was sick with worry and stress and watching my person suffer. So I will always be grateful to what that relationship gave me. And I don't think that there is just one or even two people for anyone. I think that I'll find someone again when the time is right. And I'm excited to see what's next.
I love that, and I have to say when we were in Seoul, also having drinks again, you mentioned, like, you get the opportunity to fall in love again. You get that, like, spark and that excitement again.
Yeah, yeah, there's nothing like it.
It truly is, as you say, it's a magical feeling, but it also seems like it kind of has helped you heal as well. So it gives you, like, the light, that you wanna move towards to kind of move past it, and it's part of the healing process too.
It absolutely is, yeah, and it's fun. It's fun to be in love. I'm all for it.
I'm very pro love as well, so absolutely. As we near kind of the end of every Zero F's conversation, we have something called the permission slip, and I think that you've given yourself permission in a couple of different ways, but I really want to talk to you now about, like, what is your permission slip? Where have you given yourself permission to let go of something that either holds you down or holds you back?
So, one thing I took from my husband, who was many people's favorite person, was beloved by many, and he, at the same time, was wholly himself and very grounded in his desires. And he would, without compunction, really just say no thank you to the things that he didn't want to do in life, whether it was a social engagement. I mean, mostly social engagements, frankly. He was a little bit of a homebody. And he did it in a way that was so kind and with a sense of humor always that no one begrudged him for it. And so I have given myself permission to say no when I want to opt out and know that the people who I love understand that and they love me anyway.
Absolutely. No, there's something really freeing about no longer feeling obligated to things that you just don't want to do.
Yeah,
So I think that's a great permission slip. I know you, and so I feel like I can say you are in your zero F's era now. Do you feel like you are?
100%. I am. I give a
And
lot of F's about a lot of things, but as you say, the things that don't matter, I can let go of.
absolutely. Do you have any advice for someone who is on their zero F's journey right now? Is
Yeah,
wanting to,
I would say that the other big thing I've learned through the last 10 years of my life is to trust your intuition. It's something I wish I could go back and help my younger self understand. And it's really gotten me through the hardest time in my life.
yeah, trusting your gut is some of the best advice ever. Like, I just want to thank you for trusting me with your story, for coming on and talking about this. I know it's something really deeply personal, but I really appreciate you sharing more about this element of your life.
Thank you so much, Misty, for having me. I think the funny thing is that this is a story I actually don't mind sharing with most people. And I actually sometimes wish people would ask me more about it because it is such a part of me and who I am. And if there's one thing I've learned is that, yes, it's a club that you don't want to be in, but that you're not alone. And there are people all over the world, probably in your lives that you don't realize that have experienced this kind of loss and tragedy. And sometimes just getting in there and shining some light on it lifts the whole thing. It makes it a little bit lighter. And it can make for some awkward cocktail conversation. I'm not going to lie, but I do actually appreciate being asked and sharing my story. I'm an open book about it. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's because people can't handle it or don't want to know. I think they're worried about being intrusive or to triggering, an emotion that you don't want to have in that moment or whatever. So I think it's a good piece of advice, I guess, for people who aren't sure how to approach someone who's gone through a similar situation or who may be grieving or just if you're unsure of what to do, I guess just ask.
And approach that situation with kindness and an open heart. And I think you might be surprised at the kind of connection it can create.
Well, again, thank you so much for sharing today. Thanks for sharing not just your journey, but about Ben as well. I think it's a beautiful tribute to him and memory of him as well. Well, again, but thanks to Marika for sharing her story. And be sure to follow us on Instagram at 0fsera or email us at 0fsera@gmail.com. And remember to be all out of F's for the things that don't matter so that you can concentrate on the things that do. Thanks so much, everyone. See you next week.